Hello, I'm Bryan Goulet of the Goulet Pen Company, and we are here for the 21st episode of Goulet Q&A. This is where I take your questions and I give you answers. They may not be the right answers, but they're the best ones that I have swirling around in my head. So as long as you appreciate what I do and think I have any expertise in the matter, then it's hopefully of use to you. So I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. Anyway, so it's February 7th, 2014 here. I've been doing this Q&A thing for a while, really loving it. Glad to be back here doing it again. Thanks for spending time with me today on this video. And I'm kind of deviated a little bit because normally I do a theme and then an open forum where you can just ask random questions, and then a theme and then random questions. I decided to deviate from that this week because I wanted to try something new, which was to do a brand theme. So to kick off the first brand theme, I wanted to do Lamy. And there's not really any particular reason why I wanted to do that. I get a lot of questions about Lamy all the time, and I thought that it would be kind of cool to do a Lamy Central Q&A. I ended up getting a lot of really good questions. A lot of them are going to be pretty quick, I think. So I'm going to be able to kind of pound them out. I've got this big list of lots of questions here. I don't think I'm going to be able to answer every single question that was asked of me everywhere, but I think I'll be able to cover a pretty wide gamut of Lamy questions. So that said, I'll just go ahead and kind of dive right into it. So the first question I have is from Bryan M in an email. And Bryan said, given that I disassemble my Safaris and All-Stars to clean them, I've noted over time that the nibs seem to fit more loosely on the feeds. The nibs are not falling off, they just slide off and on a little too easily. I assume that pinching the nibs together at the points where they slide onto the feeds will help. I call those the wings. But how can I do this without affecting the tines and throwing off their alignment? Thanks. Okay, Bryan, so yeah, I don't think that's incredibly uncommon. Actually, sometimes a nib will fit a little loose like that, just, naturally anyway. These nibs, they're kind of mass-produced, obviously. They're relatively inexpensive nibs, and they're German nibs. They're pretty precise, but every now and then you'll get one that's a little bit loose. Or, in your case, you've been taking the nib on and off, and, sometimes stuff happens and the nib just kind of loosens up a little bit. It's not the end of the world. If you just lightly pinch the wings together a little bit, like the part of the nib where it kind of curves over and latches onto the feed, lightly pinch those together. Try sliding it on again. Lightly pinch together until you get a solid fit. It shouldn't really be much that you need to pinch it. Like you won't be able to tell anything. You don't want to just go crazy on the thing. You just want to pinch it tiny little bit, try sliding it on tiny little bit, and keep doing that until it goes on there. It really shouldn't be anything that would throw off the alignment. That would have to be a pretty drastic difference, and to pinch it that much would probably make it so that you couldn't even fit the nib onto the feed. So I don't think you're at a high risk of that. Just kind of take it easy and take it one step at a time. And I think you'll be fine. I personally have never pinched one that I've thrown off the alignment before. So I think it'll be okay. Okay, next one. Kevin M in an email had two questions. The second question was also kind of reiterated by @nivelacuso on Twitter. Okay, and forgive me if I just totally botch your handle there. So the first question that Kevin had, how can you apply silicone grease to the Lamy 2000 filling system, and why will Lamy not sell the nibs for the 2000? I've inquired to Lamy directly, and they require you to return the pen to them for a change to the nib. Okay, so the first part, how do you apply silicone grease to the Lamy 2000? Technically, you can disassemble the Lamy 2000. I don't like to do that. I don't like to take the piston out of it because I personally have done that before and screwed it up to the point where I had to actually get it repaired, and that was not great. So I don't like recommending to that because I've handled a lot of pens, and if I can screw it up, just about anybody else could easily. So I don't like doing that because it's an expensive pen, and you don't want to do that. It's not really made to be taken apart by the user. So don't go pulling that out. I actually literally just published a video yesterday, the day before this Q&A came out, about, it's called Cool Trick for Greasing a Lamy 2000 Piston. And basically I'm taking a Q-tip and with some silicone grease on it, and I'm swabbing the inside of the barrel of the pen after I've taken the nib like grip section off the pen. Really cool trick. You can do that with Lamy 2000s. You can do that with pretty much any piston filling pen where you're able to remove the nib or the grip of the pen and get a Q-tip in there. Works really well for like Pelikan M800s, 400s, 600s. Works really well for that. Okay, so then the second question, which is asked by a couple people about why I or other retailers don't carry Lamy 2000 nibs. Why can't you buy those separately? I imagine it just comes down to price. You know, those are gold nibs. They're very expensive. They're proprietary. Lamy just decides not to do it that way. So, you know, that's just something they decided to do. I don't have any knowledge specific, you know, to why that decision was made. That's just how they choose to do it, and that's their thing. Yeah, if you do want to swap out the pen though, contact Lamy USA. If you're in the US, if you're not in the US, contact whoever your local Lamy distributor is. Local may be a loose term in that respect, but you may still be able to get the nib changed out in that way. Chris H on Facebook. Chris, you said, does Lamy have plans to break into the high mid-level bracket? Like something on tier with a Pelikan M800, for example. Okay, so Pelikan M800, you're talking like $500, $600, $700 range. I don't think we'll see anything from Lamy in that respect, just because, you know, I've been carrying Lamy for several years and never seen or heard of anything like that. I know their sweet spot is kind of in that Lamy Safari All-Star range. You know, they've got the Studio and stuff like that. Those are all sub $100 pens. So I highly doubt they're going to get into the super high-end stuff. You know, they've had some like platinum-coated, what's it called, Studio and CP1s before. They've got the stainless steel Lamy 2000, which is like pushing $400. But even still, there's just nothing that's like super stratospheric that they're going for price-wise. So I highly doubt that they'll go that way. But then I'm not privy to exactly what's coming down the pipeline in terms of whole new pens. I would say, you know, they certainly could if they wanted to. I'm sure they have the production capability and the quality control to be able to do so, but I'm not aware of anything. Joseph Q on Facebook said, I would like to see Bryan's complete Lamy collection and his recommendations for starting a Lamy collection. Okay, so I'll kick it off with starting a Lamy collection. You know, the Lamy Safari is just a workhorse pen. A lot of people love it. It's really tough to beat that. The charcoal Safari is the most popular color, just in case you're wondering, at least here at Goulet Pens. You know, it's just a cool pen. So you can swap out the nibs on it. It's relatively affordable. You know, it works. So a lot of people like the Safari. It's very durable. You know, it's great for students, great for people kind of just getting into pens. You can get different nibs and swap them out, get different writing experiences. So it's kind of neat in that respect. Pen's pretty easy to clean. You know, it just kind of does its thing. So that would be the best way to kind of get into Lamy. If you're starting a Lamy collection per se, oh man, you know, you can go on eBay and you can find all kinds of old limited edition stuff that is no longer available, but man, do they get pricey. Holy cow, it's unbelievable. You know, Safari's going for hundreds of dollars. I kid you not. It's pretty crazy. So you can definitely go broke starting a Lamy collection, but I would say if you were gonna start a Lamy collection, just buy what's available now and move forward. As soon as you try going back, that's when it gets really expensive. But yeah, okay, so for showing my Lamy collection, personally, I do have a bunch of limited editions that I've gotten my hands on, and I've kind of collected them as I've gone, so I'm gonna switch to a hand shot so that I can show you those a little bit more up close. Got asked about my Lamy collection. I'm totally gonna tease you here because I'm not gonna have time to go in depth about much of anything here. I got some conventional pens like a Vista, a Joy, stuff like that that I bought a while ago. Just for the record, you know, I'm the proprietor of the Goulet Pen Company, so I have access to all of the regularly stocked Lamy pens, but that's probably not so much what you're interested in. You're probably more interested in the limited edition stuff and stuff that you can't get anymore. So I have an old pink Safari right here, turquoise, green, apple green, which is no longer around, the neon, which I think is still around, but maybe not for much longer, and then the orange, which I know is coveted by some, but this is the only orange that I've actually ever seen. I was lucky to get my hands on that one. Some other cool ones, I got a white Studio, which is kind of cool. It's like this pearlescent white. That's got a gold nib on it. I've got the old blue before the Imperial blue came out, and I really like this blue. It's kind of like a cobalt Goulet blue, if you will. The old purple Studio, or violet Studio, I think it was called. And then a toffee Studio, which is really cool. So I like that one a lot. Lamy, the Ocean Blue All-Star, it's a regular one, but one of my favorites. The Pearl All-Star. The Toffee All-Star, another one of my favorites. The Royal Red, oh yeah, the Ruby Red, sorry. The Ruby Red All-Star, that is also one of my favorites. I don't know why, I just really like that. Red's usually not my thing, but I really like that. And then the black one. So that's kind of my limited Lamy collection there. There's a lot more that I don't have, like the mint green and stuff like that I really liked. And then the one that I really wanted to show you was this one that was really interesting. I was lucky to get my hands on this. It's a very interesting pen. So it comes in an interesting box. This is called the Lamy Lady, okay? And it came in a couple of different colors, but this is affectionately known as the Golden Cow around the Goulet office. So it doesn't have a clip, but it has these little balls here that kind of keep the pen from rolling around. And it's got a gold nib that is kind of a different nib. So it wraps around the pen, completely around. So it's very different kind of setup than any of the other Lamy pens, and it's still got the same kind of converter thing going on, but it kind of disassembles differently. It's just a very interesting pen. It was pretty expensive, but I was just so intrigued by it. I think it's not that beautiful, but it's kind of beautiful in its own weird way. But that's my special little treat I wanted to show you today. Next question I've got here at Senecabud on Twitter. Will Lamy make their violet ink in bottles instead of just cartridges? This is something I've asked, our Lamy rep before, and I got no straight answer on this. I don't know why they only have it in cartridges. It would be cool to see it in bottles, but for whatever reason, they have this color, Lamy Violet, that's only available in cartridges. Wish I had a better answer for you, but as far as I know, there's no plans to make that into a bottle form. Weird. I don't know. They're not the only ones that do that too. Pelikan, has a pink ink that's only in their cartridges, and Pilot's got several different colors in their mixable stuff. And it may just be the kind of thing that they just discontinued the bottle a while ago and kept doing the cartridges. I don't know. I really don't know. Next question. Wesley S and Joe S on Facebook both had kind of the same question, so I'll kind of both give you credit here for the question. Why buy different model Lamys on the lower end when all the nibs are the same? Why should I pay $100 more for a better barrel and cap? Okay, fair question. I think specifically you're probably talking about the Studio, because that's the one where there's the biggest price difference but within the same model. I know the CP1 is kind of like that too. So yes, there are some major differences in the prices, but it's not just because of the material. Yes, the material of the pen can make a difference. For example, the CP1, you've got a metal one, and then you've got the platinum one, which is literally like coated in platinum. So that's going to be expensive. However, there's also a gold nib on it, and that is where a lot of that cost comes from. If you look at the Studios, the Palladium, the Platinum Gray, and the Royal Red, they all have 14 karat gold nibs. And if you look, just that 14 karat gold nib is going to be pushing $100 if you go to Lamy USA's site. They don't sell their gold nibs through retailers, but you can get them through Lamy USA. They're very expensive. And that is a lot of the cost. In fact, if you look at the cost discrepancy between the lower end stainless steel nib Studios and the higher end gold nib ones, you'll see that the cost of that gold nib is pretty much that difference right there. So that's where a lot of that price difference comes from. It's not just in the barrel and cap, it's the nib. Pavel V on Facebook said, is there a waterproof Lamy ink? And the answer is no. Lamy Blue Black used to be an iron gall formulation, but a couple of years ago they reformulated it, no longer got any iron gall in it, and it is not waterproof. So, it is what it is. So they're pretty much conventional inks. Justin L on Facebook, are there other converters that would fit Lamys with larger ink capacity? The answer there is no. They have two different converters, the Z24 and the Z26. Those are currently available. Lamy's been around for a while, so they may have had converters way back in the day. I don't know. I'm not a Lamy vintage expert, but I don't even know that's what you're asking. Modern pens, you get the Z24 and the Z26. The Z26 will fit in everything because it's just smooth bore around it and it'll fit in. The Z24 will only fit in the ones that are let's see here, the Safari, the All-Star, the Vista, the Joy. Yeah, and that might be it. Yeah, so it's got these pegs on the side of it that will only allow it. But that doesn't even really matter because they're both the same ink capacity. So they're essentially just a very similar converter. They've got a few things that are different about them. I've got a video specifically on what makes those converters different, and I'm failing to recall every little minute detail about those. but there is no higher capacity Lamy converter. Now, if you go to a Lamy cartridge and you refill Lamy cartridges, you can get, 25% more ink capacity or, something like that. So you can get a little bit more ink capacity if you refill cartridges. That might be an option for you. At Penincillin on Twitter. Any cheaper pistons in the works besides the Lamy 2000? Not that I'm aware of. The Lamy 2000 is the only piston filling Lamy pen at the moment, both the Macrolon version and the stainless steel version. And that's all that I know of. And I haven't heard of any rumblings of any new pen designs in the works. So that's about all there is to choose from. Michelle B on Facebook, you asked 2 questions about my Lamy Studio. I've got one of the limited edition violet ones. Is it common for the matte finishes to chip around the edge of the lid? And is there anything I can do about a squeaky nib? I love the way it writes, except for that. Okay, so is it common for the matte finishes to chip around the edge of the lid? I wouldn't say common, but I wouldn't say unheard of. There were a couple of pens, we were selling those pens at the time, and there were a couple of them that had kind of that chipping issue around the edge. There was a warranty thing, and Lamy, took care of that. I would reach out to them and just see what they can do. I mean, it's several years have passed at this point, so I don't know what they're going to be able to do for you at this point, but it wouldn't hurt to reach out. So go to Lamy USA's site and just see what they can do for you. And then, is there anything that I can do about a squeaky nib? I love the way it writes, except for that. Yeah, this every now and then, not just Lamy, but certain other pens too. Like I know some of the Namiki Falcon broad nibs just tend to squeak a little bit more. Every now and then I'll get a vanishing point nib that'll just have kind of a squeak to it, and it's just really strange. I don't know exactly what causes that. But if you have a brown paper bag, you can try doing some figure 8s on the brown paper bag. A lot of times that fixes it. I think it's just a little bit of feedback, and it's just something about the nib rubbing together, or something about just the vibration that's happening on the nib that causes that squeak. You can also try like mylar paper or maybe a micro mesh. That might be a little aggressive just for a squeak, but smoothing out whatever rough spot is causing that squeak to happen, that would probably take care of it for you. I should probably flip my little guy here, huh? Juan F on Facebook. What's the best way to clean the translucent grip section of the All-Star? I found the best way is to use a bulb syringe. If you look, I've got videos on bulb syringes. Just go on YouTube and do a search for bulb syringe, fast pen flushing, whatever it is. I can't recall exactly the name of my own video. But anyway, it's a super great trick for cleaning out Lamy pens. One point I do want to make about that is I did have somebody that emailed me. They have a Vista that was a couple of years old, and they've been using the bulb syringe. And what had happened is over time, the bulb syringe, because they kind of forced it way down in there, had actually kind of cracked and separated the where the converter fits onto there, and the converter wasn't fitting tightly anymore. So they had to kind of be careful with it. So one trick that you can do with that is if you actually cut the tip off of a bulb syringe. For if you're not familiar with a bulb syringe, this is a bulb syringe. Of course, I've got my little Edison bulb filler nib in here. But this is a good example of the kind of adaptation that I'm talking about. If you have a Lamy pen and you don't want to have the full tip of the bulb syringe and jam it inside there, you can actually cut the bulb syringe and then fit the pen inside the bulb syringe. You'll have to cut little bits at a time to make sure that you get the right diameter on there. But that's a great trick for any pen that you don't want to jam inside your pen, or that you can't. Like if you have any Pilot or Namiki pens, they have this kind of thing that comes around the end of the feed that doesn't allow you to fit a bulb syringe in there flush. Then you can actually cut it and insert the pen into the syringe and flush that way. Works really great. You can do that same thing for the Lamy if you don't want to risk cracking where that converter fits on there. Let me put that back. Okay. And then basically just flush the pen like crazy. It'll eventually get everything out of there, and you should be good to go. It's almost a blessing and a curse having a translucent grip like that, because honestly, if you saw what was inside most of your grip sections on your pens, you probably would clean them more thoroughly. But it's because it's translucent like that that you're seeing how much ink is getting left behind with a normal cleaning. So you really got to flush it out quite a bit to get it clean. Heath C on Facebook. Is there any way to purchase a complete set of nibs together? Or if not, how do we get the case that holds them all that I've seen in some pictures in the past? So a complete set of nibs together. I mean, Lamy doesn't package up a complete set of nibs. So unless some retailer like me or somebody else was to put together a package of nibs, then you would just have to buy them individually. So that because Lamy doesn't package it up that way, no one's going to do that unless they feel so inclined. So yeah, that's that answer there. How do you get the case that holds them all? Well, the cases that you're talking about, it holds 5 nibs at a time. It's a little plastic case, kind of like the size of maybe an earring case or something. It's really pretty cheap, and it's honestly just meant as kind of a nib transporter thing to go from the distributors or whatever to the retailers. So as a retailer, like, we get some of those things, but we don't always get a ton of them. It depends. Only when you buy nibs individually, separate from the pens, are you getting those cases. So it's really not enough to sell, and even still, they don't have their own SKU and stuff like that. So retailers really just don't mess with those, including us here. We have a few, but not enough to really make it a marketable product, and we can't buy those cases themselves, so it's an erratic supply, and so it's really not much worth fussing with. So you may see some pictures just because retailers here and there may have included some. If people have bought a bunch of nibs and they just felt inclined to throw it in, they may have done that. I know we've done that from time to time, but that's why you don't see them regularly offered anywhere, is because they don't come that way from the manufacturer. Alex Y on Facebook. Tell me about the lefty nib. What differentiates it from the regular nibs? And then what's your preference for a fast drying ink that won't smudge as readily? I just bought my first fountain pen, a Lamy Vista. Very excited to try it out. I also got the fast drying noodler ink and the lefty nib. Okay, so you're asking about the lefty nib. Lamy has a left-handed nib. They didn't used to have it very readily available. We actually had to kind of special order it, and it wasn't available for a long time. And it's okay. It's essentially a medium nib. That's what it is. It only comes in one size, the lefty nib, but it's a equivalent to the right-handed medium nib, if you will. And it's ground just a little bit differently. So it's ground a little bit smoother at the tip of the nib. It's rounded over a little bit more so that in a pushing motion, it can write a little smoother. And I'm not left-handed, so when I hold a pen with my left hand, I feel like some kind of unnatural elephant man anyway trying to write, and so I don't know what I'm doing enough. My hand is not sensitive enough to feel a difference anyway. But one of my admins here, Katie, she's great. She's left-handed, and so she has written with it, and she says it's not like a night and day world of difference kind of thing, but it can help. And what I've heard from talking to other people who are left-handed and have some experience with these different nibs, it does make a difference when you are writing in kind of a conventional, I'll call it a conventional left-handed motion. So what I mean by that is, if you have your line that you're writing on, and then you have your hand at kind of a 45-degree angle, and you're writing kind of across like that. So your hand is under your writing, and you're doing that. So if you're a left-handed underwriter, that's where you're coming from. So not if you're coming perpendicular to it, or hook-handed where you're coming up over it like that and writing like that. There's the lefties have all different kinds of ways because of either improper training or the desk situation that you may have had writing in school. You have all kinds of different angles that you'll hold your pen and hold your hand and stuff like that. And if you're writing hook-handed or in a really extreme angle like that, it's not going to make as much a difference for you, these left-handed nibs. It's really only if you have it kind of at that 45-degree underwriting kind of angle that I've heard from those experienced lefties that a left-handed nib will even make a significant difference for you. Chad T on Facebook and Pensomnia on Twitter both had a similar question. When are they going to make a purple Safari? Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one. Believe me, every chance I get, I keep asking, hey, they're not coming out with a purple Safari, are they? I would love to see a purple Safari come out. I think it would be great. I have no knowledge about when or if that is ever going to happen. I think it's probably the biggest opportunity of a color that they could offer in a Safari, but Lamy, as they make the decisions they make, they don't necessarily ask my opinion. So I'm still not important enough to warrant the president of Lamy to call me up and ask my opinions when developing products. So maybe I'll get there someday. But yeah, it would be great to see a purple Safari, but I am not privy to any knowledge of that happening anytime soon. Got a question. Forgive me. I got a bunch of characters on Facebook, and I do not know how to pronounce your name, so forgive me there. He said, will there ever be a green all-star, or was there ever a green all-star that I missed? Yes, there was. I don't know when it was, maybe in 2010. I think it happened right before I started carrying the Lamy brand, but there was a mint, it was kind of it was like a mint green, so it's actually a really nice color. It's one of the ones that I wish I had. You know, you can buy them, but they're like $100 or something. They're pretty expensive to find them used, but you know, it's not super old, so they're still around. But yes, there was a green. It was kind of a lighter green, you know, like a mint, well, mint green, yeah, pretty much like that. So yeah, you did miss it. Sorry. John D on Facebook said, does Lamy make right foot oblique stub nibs? I've heard they do, but my Google foo on this topic is apparently not strong. I do not know. I'm not incredibly well versed on oblique nibs. I know in the US, ever since I've started carrying Lamy back in 2011, they have not had any oblique nibs on any pens in the US. So I don't really know much about that at all. I do have a Lamy 2000 that's been discontinued. That is a left oblique Lamy 2000. An oblique, for those of you not familiar with it, if you go conventional nib is going to have a round tip. Okay, so it looks the same no matter which direction you're writing it. You have a stub nib, which is ground kind of like this. So instead of being round along the edge, it's going to be kind of flatter, so that your cross stroke is going to be thinner than your downstroke. Okay, an oblique nib is kind of the same thing as a stub nib, except that it's ground kind of offset like this. So you're going to have one, you know, foot, as they call it, is going to be lower than the other. So if you have a left foot, then that's the left one, the left, you know, side of the nib. If you're looking at the nib from the, I don't even know how to describe it, but do some research. I can't explain it very well right now, but a left foot is when it is coming to the left, and the right foot is when it's coming to the right. So you're asking, the one I have is a left oblique. So I'm inclined to think that they probably don't have a right oblique, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I'd heard that they had a steel nib, you know, oblique nib, but I never saw it. It was discontinued by the time I had inquired about it a couple of years ago. So it would have been cool, but honestly, not a lot of manufacturers have oblique nibs, period, let alone a company that has more kind of the value pens like Lamy has. The only one that I can even think of off the top of my head that has obliques at all is Pelikan, and that's on their very expensive multi-$100 pens. So, and usually those are by special order only, even from a retailer. Like we got a special order from Germany. Pretty crazy. So not very common, but you can get them ground from a Nibmeister. That's pretty much your only other option. Got a lot of questions here. I'm just like rolling along, let me tell you. Okay, let's keep on going. Dan C on Facebook said, what's your top selling color of Lamy ink in a bottle? This is a close one. I had to pull up some information, and I'm not gonna give you any hard, fast numbers here, but Lamy Black came out on top, just barely beat out Lamy Turquoise. The two were really neck and neck. Like maybe if I'd pulled the information a week from now, Lamy Turquoise could have been higher. I don't know. And then Lamy Blue Black was close, but not quite up where those two were. And then everything else was kind of just behind that. So all those are pretty good colors. I like Lamy Turquoise a lot, actually. It's got some really good shading. The Blue Black probably is a little skewed because, you know, it's been reformulated and stuff like that. But Blue Black's a pretty popular color anyway. But yeah, there you go, Lamy Black, top selling Lamy color, at least at Goulet pens. I can't tell you overall for Lamy as a brand, but that's my top one anyway. Okay, so a couple different people asking this one. So Ahmed K on Facebook and Zchen999 on Twitter said, can you show us some of the less common models like the Logo, CP1, and the Scala? I don't think you've done videos on them, and I find your overviews to be quite useful when considering a purchase. Well, that's cool. I'm glad you like my opinion. That's awesome. The Scala, excuse me, man, I just had lunch right before this. You have to excuse me. The Scala, yeah, I don't have a Scala. I have seen it in person once, and I was like, yeah, that's overpriced. personally. I felt it was overpriced, and I think they might even be discontinuing it. I don't even know if that pen's going to be around. So it's just very expensive. It's got the same nib as a Safari, and it's $100 or whatever. It's just really expensive. So I don't think that pen's going to make it long term. So I don't have one. I can't show you that one. And then the logo and the CP1, you're right. I've never done a video on those. And the logo is not as popular. The CP1 though has got a loyal following. Actually, several people around the Goulet office here, it's one of their favorite pens. When you come onto the Goulet team here, after you worked here for a few weeks, you get the choice. Once you familiarize yourself with fountain pens and all the products and stuff, you get to choose a fountain pen, within a budget that you want to have for your personal collection. We do that as a way to kind of get everybody kind of more into it, and it's really cool. Everybody really appreciates that. So several people have chosen the Lamy CP1 as their pen of choice, and I don't get it because personally it's not my favorite pen. It's way too thin for me, but I think that's the appeal, is it is a very, very thin fountain pen. So in order to show you that better, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to another hand shot here and show you the logo and the CP1. So here's the CP1. It's a very thin pen. If you have it kind of next to a number 2 pencil here, you can see how thin this thing really is. Showing it in comparison to a Lamy All-Star, the All-Star looks like a pregnant cow compared to the CP1. But the CP1 is really just that thin, which is the reason why a lot of people like it. It's actually kind of a favorite around the Goulet office here. I personally do not like it. It is too thin for me. The grip is plastic, so for me it doesn't feel, it's kind of ribbed or whatever, but it doesn't feel as nice as the rest of the pen does. The grip is kind of the cheapest feeling part of the pen, but don't let that dismiss it. A lot of people love the CP1, so that's what's going on with it. Got some questions about the the logo. So this is the logo. It comes in a different box than the rest of the Lamy pens do, which I kind of love and I kind of hate. It's a neat box, and so it kind of closes up like that, except the thing that I hate about it is that the stuff always falls down behind it, the cartridge and the little warranty card thing. So that always kind of falls behind it, and that's a little annoying. But the pen itself is kind of neat. It's a lighter pen. It uses the same Lamy nibs. I don't have any nibs on these particular pens, but you can see it's the same kind of setup. It comes in a smooth and a brushed version. It's a little bit thinner pen as well. Showing it next to the CP1, it's not quite as thin as that one, but next to an All-Star, it's definitely thinner than those. So these pens are not as popular. The logo is a little bit more expensive of a pen, and it does not come with a converter. You would think that when you get to pens in this price range, it might come with a converter, but it does not. So, I don't know what it is about these pens. They're just a little bit different than the rest of the Lamy line. They tend not to get a lot of attention, but the clip is kind of cool. It's got a spring clip in it, so that's kind of neat there. And it's an interesting pen, so something to be considered. All right, next question. Kevin K on Facebook said, something I've always wondered is why is the 2000 the only piston filler in Lamy's lineup? Surely they could release other piston fillers. That's a good question. That would be really cool because the Lamy 2000 is one of my favorite pens, and I would love to see kind of a scaled down version or a simplified version of the Lamy 2000, maybe something made of plastic that would have kind of the same guts that could be made more affordably with a steel nib or something. I don't know. I think that would be really cool, but I don't know why. I'm not that high up in the Lamy world. I'm not privy to any knowledge about their development of products and stuff like that. I think it'd be great. Let me officially throw my encouragement out there that I would love to see a more affordable piston Lamy pen out there, but for what it's worth, there's my opinion. Kathy S on Facebook said, I love my Safari and I have a fine nib. Is there extra fine available? Why, yes. Yes, there is. Go look on gouletpens.com. We've got all the options there. But basically, here's the rundown. So you've got extra fine, fine, medium, and broad that are available in both the black color and the steel color. They're both stainless steel nibs, but you can get a black color kind of coating on the nib or a steel, just the plain steel. Depending on which pen you're buying, like if you're buying the charcoal Safari, you may want the black nib, or if you're buying a CP1, it's black, you may want the black nib. So you may want to mix and match kind of like that. You can get a 1.1, 1.5, and 1.9 millimeter stub italic nib in the steel color only. So, but you can get that on whichever pen. Now, not all the pens, the thing that's kind of confusing to some people is not all of the Lamy pens come available with all of these nibs as an option from the manufacturer. Certain retailers like me, and I know others do this too, we will swap out the nibs, take the nibs off the pens, and allow you, as the the person buying the Lamy pen, to buy a pen with whatever nib that you want on it. That is a labor of love that we do for your sake, because it does not come to us like that. We have to swap out every nib of every Lamy pen that comes into our place, and then buy separate nibs of things that aren't normally available and swap them out. And so it's really kind of a logistical mess, but because it's such a good value add for you as a customer, that's something we are happy to do, to be able to offer that to you. If things were more streamlined and we were a bigger operation, maybe, or like if you go on Amazon, you're never going to see a black nib on a CP1 on Amazon, because you got to swap that out to make that available. You know, larger warehouse type operations that don't do nib swapping, they will not have certain Lamy configurations available, because you got to do that manually. And then there's also, on some of the pens, I think now they're discontinuing the high-end Platinum CP1, so I think it's just some of the studio pens that are going to have that 14 karat two-tone Lamy nib available on them in extra fine, fine, medium, and broad. So to answer your question, yes, an extra fine nib is available. Steve B on Facebook said, what are the major differences between a Lamy Studio and a 2000, and why do prices vary so much in each of the models? I already kind of covered the prices a little bit in the Studio about why the prices vary there, because it depends on whether it comes with a steel nib or a gold nib. And that's the main difference. And whenever they do, you'll notice if they ever do a limited edition or a like special edition or whatever they want to call it, the yearly pen that they might come out with, like the Royal Red Studio is one, the Violet was a previous one, they've had a toffee, they've had a white one. Those are ones that are made in a production run and then they're gone. If you ever have that kind of situation, they always put gold nibs on those, so those are always more expensive. So you could say, oh, because it's like limited edition, whatever, or special edition, that it is more expensive. Well, that's not really the case. It's more that it has a gold nib on it. So that's the biggest thing. And then, I don't know if you were specifically asking about that price or the 2000. The Lamy 2000, it's got a different nib setup, so it's really kind of a different pen than the Studio in general. The nib itself is a little bit different. Yes, they both can have gold nibs on them, but they're a little bit different gold nibs. The 2000, the main reason it is more expensive is because it's a piston filling pen. The material it's made of is completely different. It's called Macrolon. It's a fiberglass and stainless steel kind of composite that they put on the pen. Really kind of cool stuff. And snap cap, which is nice. Well, actually, yeah, the Studio is a snap cap too, so that doesn't really make it any different. But yeah, so that's the main difference there, is just the kind of engineering. They're really kind of two completely different pens, even though their overall shape is not drastically different. Yeah. And then the Lamy 2000, the prices can vary just because it's a popular pen, and whenever you have a popular pen, you get some people who try to deeply discount just to try to move them. But, Lamy, like a lot of pen companies, sometimes struggles with price gougers online, and that's one thing that you'll see from time to time. Especially on places like Amazon or other places that just try to sell more expensive pens. You may see more price dropping going on with that kind of stuff. That's something that I get to deal with as a retailer. It's very fun. Anyway, so. Josh C. on Facebook, you said, what's your favorite Lamy 2000 nib size and why? I'm between a fine and an extra fine. I'm a student who writes notes often, and sometimes my fine Safari nib is too wide. Any advice? Well, the Safari nib is going to be a completely kind of different thing than the Lamy 2000. The Lamy 2000 nib is really kind of a special bird. It's got a fine sweet spot on it, so it's not as rounded as... Is rounded the right way to describe it? I'm not sure exactly how to describe how this nib feels, except that it's got a fine sweet spot. If you rotate the pen too much in one way or another, it won't write as consistently. So it's a pen that really kind of takes some getting used to, but once you do get used to it, it's a great pen. Oh, my daughter's over at the door there. Hi, Ellie. I've got a glass door here on my office, and my kids like to run up and say hi every now and then. Anyway, so yeah, that is, so you're asking me what's my favorite size of the Lamy 2000. I've been using a medium for a while, but then I recently acquired a medium oblique, which is really kind of similar to the medium. It's not super drastically oblique. And so I now have two Lamy 2000s that are pretty similar in size. I'm probably going to, at some point, get rid of my medium, even though I've had it for a while. Maybe I won't get rid of it, I don't know. I probably would like to move to an extra fine or a fine, and I don't know, that's a tough decision. I would probably personally go to an extra fine, just because I already have a medium, so I would want to go a little more drastic and go to an extra fine for when I'm dealing with paper that's really absorbent and I want something I want to write particularly small. However, let me give you the caveat here that the extra fine and the fine on the Lamy 2000 are really not that different from each other. Every now and then I find these pens that the extra fine and fine just aren't ground that drastically different, and the Lamy 2000 is one of those. Go into the nib nook, go on gouletpens.com, click on the nib nook, and pull up the Lamy 2000, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about if you do that. A couple questions left here. Allyson C on Facebook says, how do I perfect my Lamy nibs? I try to get them using the kit from your store, smooth, but they still catch on some paper. They're quite all right with Mead binder paper, but once on any other cheaper paper, they start to get scratchy. So first thing is check the alignment of it. If you have a loop, that's the best thing. Typically when you're dealing with a scratchy thing that has a misalignment issue, it's because one of the nib tines is dropped a little bit, and it's going to feel scratchy more in one direction than another. So if you feel really scratchy going to the left, it's because your left tine is kind of dropped a little bit. So, and you can just kind of take your fingers and bend that up just a little bit. I've got a video on that on the Goulet loop. Check out the Goulet loop video for that. However, if you've got the kit and you're trying to smooth it out, if you've got a misalignment issue, the smoothing isn't going to work so well until you get them aligned again. You could be smoothing, but you're only smoothing one tine because that one tine that's dropped is the one that's kind of catching. So that's always the first thing, is you check your alignment. If your alignment is good and you're smoothing it and it's still catching, you got to smooth it some more. Okay, the best thing to do would be to take the paper that it feels scratchy on and have that next to you while you're doing your smoothing. So do your figure 8 pattern as you're smoothing it, okay, and then do some figure 8s on your paper. And then if you still feel scratchy, go back to the Mylar or micro mesh, whatever it is that you're using to do your smoothing. If you're using Mylar, and Mylar is it's a fine abrasive, but it's not super aggressive. It's really kind of just for fine honing. Maybe you have a little bit more aggressive scratchy feeling and you need to go to micro mesh. So maybe swap between the two. If you've got the whole kit, maybe you've got both. So try going to the micro mesh, do some figure 8s, go back to the paper, try it, and just kind of keep going back and forth until it does feel smooth and it's not catching anymore. And then let's see here. If you do have it scratchy kind of in one direction, the alignment looks okay. Rather than doing the smoothing motion in a whole figure 8 and really kind of wearing it down, if you feel it just kind of like, say, from top right to bottom left, it's just in that motion that is feeling scratchy, just kind of do some light back and forth with that, just that motion on your micro mesh. And then do that on your paper and kind of go back and forth doing that just to work that one little spot that maybe needs some work, and you can usually work that out. Knowing no more than what you've described to me here, that's what I would say should be your next step to try. And last question here. I think this is the most questions I've covered in a single Q&A. Maybe not, actually. That would be a good quiz question. But anyway, Francisco G on Facebook, you said, how do you remove the feed on an All-Star? My suggestion would be don't, because first off, it's really hard and you could damage the wings of the feed and stuff trying to get it out. It's not very easy to do on most Lamy pens. But if you put it back in the wrong orientation, you can jam it in there, screw up the whole feed, and you ruin your pen. So I say don't take out your feed on a regular basis. It's really not meant to be done that way. However, if you do accidentally pop it out, there's a very particular orientation that you have to slide it back in. And I have a video on that. I think it's called replacing your Lamy feed or repairing or something. I forget. I should have looked it up ahead of time. I don't remember the name of my own video. I've shot so many of these now. But go look that up. Just look up Lamy feed on YouTube or whatever under Ink Nouveau, and you'll find it there somewhere. So there's a very specific orientation. You have to get it back in there, and I've done a video on it, so check that out. Okay, wow. A lot of questions on Lamy, and it was great. I'm really glad to see it. Next week, I am going to be going back to the open forum because, I'm going to keep going with the brand thing. But next week, because I've kind of done 2 weeks with a theme, I'm going to go back to open forum so you can ask me whatever random questions you have. It's going to be February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, for all you lovers out there. So please don't spend your Valentine's Day watching my video. Unless you've got a thing for me, which you shouldn't because I'm married, crying out loud. So that said, I'm in a punchy mood. Yes, it will be my second Q&A next week, and that'll be kind of cool. Open forum, so you can ask whatever pen, ink questions, paper questions, whatever that you have. You can ask in a lot of different ways. You can email me at gouletqa@gouletpens.com. You can leave a hashtag GouletQA on Twitter. You can leave a question on Facebook once we post it, probably Monday or Tuesday next week, asking for questions. You can leave a comment on Ink Nouveau on this video or on YouTube on this video. And there you go. That should get me lots of questions. I really appreciate you spending time with me, watching me in yet another week of the Goulet Q&A. I'm really enjoying doing these. I hope this was fun for you. If you got any other Lamy questions, feel free to just leave it in the comments. We can keep the conversation going. If I get a lot of questions, maybe we can do a second one. Maybe, do something specific towards certain pens or something. I don't know. We'll see. Lots of opportunities here. No shortage of content for me putting this stuff out there. So I hope you have a great weekend, a great rest of the week, and right on.